And of course, we've been talking a lot today. The big story today, the Ashes, is very much underway, and it was a very interesting and exciting day yesterday, and I'm delighted to say that we have Paul Dennett on the line once again, Australian cricket writer, to go through the action with us. Morning, Paul.
Morning, guys. How you going?
Yeah, we're good. I'm interested to know your take on day one, because it kind of ebbed and flowed. At one point, Australia looking very good, then looking very bad, and then obviously Steve Smith, fantastic innings, and in the end, it's a reasonable total without being extraordinary. Is that fair?
I think that's fair, but I also think that it was an epic day to be at. I thoroughly enjoyed the atmosphere of Edgbaston, and then the position that Australia were in of 122 for 8. I was thinking, oh, here we go again. And then I think that Smith, I've not seen a better innings than that in my whole life of watching cricket. I think that he's now got an average of 62, second only to Bradman, and it was just an amazing day to be there.
Yeah, well, look, let's just start with the beginning of that innings, of course, and the Australians found themselves 122 for 8. Is this a concern for you going forward, do you think, or is this just a bit of a one-off?
Oh, it's definitely a concern. It's been a repeated factor in Ashes series in England for a long time now that even our very best batsmen struggle in English conditions, and Steve Smith aside, and bizarrely the last two batsmen, Siddle and Lyon, that is continuing, and I think that there's every prospect that it will continue for the rest of the series. Hopefully, from an Australian point of view, the Australian bowlers can do something similar to the England top order as well.
I was going to say, on that note, what will Australia's plans be this morning?
I think they'll be very disciplined, and they'll be aiming at the top of off stump, and they've talked about being quite boring in the lead up to the series, and I think that's going to be crucial, that if they go too short and go too hard, then England will get away from them. But if they can keep it on the stumps in a most boring manner, the pitch was moving about just a couple of inches yesterday, which is often the most difficult. And so I think if the overhead conditions can get a bit more overcast, it's just disturbingly starting to look a bit sunny out of my window at the moment, but if they can get a bit more overcast, then I think England could be in a bit of trouble early on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be kind of all eyes on England's top order, because you just sense as well, actually, that both teams are potentially in a relatively similar position in terms of their top orders. I mean, the England one is certainly untried and untested. Jason Roy, will be all eyes on him today to see how he goes, and I'm sure, well, I certainly am hoping that he does very, very well. But obviously a big miss for England going forward is going to be Jimmy Anderson. He pulled up yesterday with what was believed to be a calf strain, as far as we're aware. He had a scan, and there's rumours that he might be out for the rest of the series. I mean, the Australians must be rubbing their hands together with glee about that.
I'm sure that they are. I mean, as a cricket lover, I was really disappointed for him, because it does change the complexion of the game so much, and it's an unusual sport where the only substitutions other than concussion that we talked about yesterday are you can't have an actual player coming on and bowling. You know, it would be a very different sport if England had been able to say, right, he's injured, we're bringing Jofra Archer on, and the game would have been a whole lot different. But I hope that Anderson can come back at some stage during the Ashes, but with such a congested schedule, and him being, his late 30s, there's certainly some doubts about it.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about Tim Payne, his captaincy in particular. Obviously, now that Steve Smith is back in the side, what leadership role will he play in the field?
Oh, I think he'll be number one. He'll make all the decisions, and I think that Smith and Warner and other senior players will be happy to provide some input. But Payne is a strong individual, and he knows that he's been brought in to do a difficult job. I think he's relishing that job. It was clear from his press conference before the first day that he knows he's not going to be around in Test cricket for too long. He's probably only got a year or two left in him, so he'll be decisive and he'll be running the show.
Okay, and is there a case to say that this morning's session, when it gets underway around 11 o'clock-ish, weather permitting, of course, could actually be one of the most important sessions of this Ashes going forward, because, it could set the tone, couldn't it, for what happens going forward, really. If England get off to a good start, then they've got a settled base, and you would expect maybe they can pile on 350, 400. And that, again, we've said before, whoever wins this first test now here at Edgbaston, there's a very, very, very good chance, in my opinion, that they will go on and win the series. So are we on the brink maybe of a vitally important session today?
Undoubtedly, and Steve Smith, with admirable precision, said that it was 52 overs before the ball started to get a bit soft, and that he started to feel as though that he was getting on top of things. And so those first 30 overs that Australia bowled this morning will be crucial. It was amazing how much the crowd were reacting to the few decent shots that were hit in the 2 overs that England batted last night. They looked pretty good in that short period of time. So, yeah, as you say, if they get away to a decent start, then England could be well on the way to regaining the urn.
Indeed. Where does Steve Smith rank in the list of Australian batting greats? I mean, the record are obviously only below Don Bradman's now. Where do you have him?
It's always dangerous to say so before someone's retired, but right at this moment, I have him at number 2. Bradman number 1, Steve Smith number 2, and he's displaced Ricky Ponting or Greg Chappell, who might have been in that position. Let's see where he finishes up when he retires, but I'm pretty confident that when he does retire, not only will he be Australia's number 2, but I'll be boring people in pubs all around the world saying that he's the world's second best ever.
Fantastic. Okay, good stuff. Just want to get a bit on the atmosphere yesterday. You alluded to it then, the way that the crowd really went wild when when Burns and Roy got going yesterday. But clearly there were a lot of boos about early doors, and Steve Smith got booed when he made his 100 as well. Not by everyone, it's important to say, but by certainly large pockets. What did you make of the atmosphere at Edgbaston yesterday? And actually, do you think that maybe over the course of this series, Steve Smith, if he keeps putting in performances like that, could win the English hearts over?
I thought the atmosphere was glorious, and I think it confirms what I've thought, that England's cricket crowds are some of the most wonderful places to be at. People all around me were chatting, friendly, really into it, but also generous. And I think that the booing was actually less than I expected. Right. The Holly stand were singing some fairly confronting songs to Steve Smith, but it's you're alive when you're at a day like that. And as I said, there was a generosity of spirit as well. And when Smith got the 100, the boos were, they're louder than the actual number indicating. You only need 5 or 10% of people booing for it to sound really loud. There were some dedicated cricket fans who didn't boo but also didn't applaud. So there's certainly, he hasn't been welcomed back with open arms by any stretch. But if he keeps on playing well, I think that as the series goes on, the reaction will soften. And
what was the Aussie crowd like? Could you hear them?
I could see them in the distance. There was a huge contingent of them, but the Aussie cricket fans, we just aren't as loud. And we have a reputation for being a hostile environment when overseas teams come down there. But I don't know, maybe because we don't have the tradition of chanting and singing at football games, we kind of tend to sit and watch the game, and then, if we've had 6 or 7 hours of drinking, maybe towards the end we get a bit loud. But the England fans are just much, much louder.
And what can England learn from the Australian innings? Is being overly positive the wrong way to go around about things?
Well, that's what people will say, that they'll say that Smith really grounded out early on, that Siddle and Lyon were content to just take the runs when they came. But if I was Jason Roy, I would be playing my natural game, that if he comes out and tries to play a very defensive innings, that he's likely to nick one off. So I think you've just got to, the cliche thing, play your natural game and go from there.
And who would Australia fear in this England batting lineup? Obviously Joe Root, I guess, would be one.
Joe Root's always number 1. I think there's a healthy fear of lots of them. Ben Stokes is someone that I, as a fan, always fear. Moeen Ali's a little bit out of form, but he's always someone that if he comes in with some freedom to play expansively, he can be a little bit scary as well.
Now, yesterday saw, for my money, one of the poorest examples of umpiring that I've seen, and that was across the board. There were 7 incidents yesterday where the decision was just straight, plain wrong. And what did you make of that? Because obviously we were relying on reviews, and it was a poor performance for my money from both of those umpires yesterday.
Yeah, it was, and I do have a lot of sympathy for them though. And I look at today, if you get a duck, you can walk off and not have to bat anymore. If you're getting thrashed around, you don't have to bowl anymore. But these umpires are going to have to front up today for another 8 hours in the sun, knowing that every decision they make 10 seconds after it's been made is being scrutinised by whatever Hawkeye is, like 7 cameras and all sorts of algorithms. In the old days, that decision they gave, for example, when they gave Warner out and he's LBW, he didn't challenge it. He'd just walk off. In the old days, everyone would have said, oh yeah, probably hitting leg stump. Today, we instantly know they got it wrong, and they got a further 6 ones wrong, as you said. It's disappointing that Richard Kettleborough is English, because he's the best umpire in the world, and he obviously can't umpire because of you've got to have neutrality. I would have liked to see what he would have done. I reckon he would have got several of those right, but probably not all of them.
Yeah, indeed. Paul, great stuff. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Paul Dennett, Australian cricket writer there, giving us his insight into yesterday's action.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was nice to hear that the Edgbaston crowd was, which, by the way, according to Tim Payne, is, of course, only at least the 16th most intimidating place to play. I don't know where that would make the most intimidating place to play.